There comes a moment in many toxic relationships when the entire illusion begins to crack. For a long time, you may have believed that the narcissist was always 10 steps ahead, carefully orchestrating every conversation, every manipulation, every emotional trap. They counted on your empathy, your patience, and your willingness to keep trying even when the relationship kept hurting you. In their mind, the outcome was already written. They believed you would keep explaining, keep defending yourself, keep chasing their approval, while they quietly pulled the strings behind the scenes. But something unexpected happened. You changed. You stopped reacting the way you once did. You began to see the patterns, the emotional traps, the subtle ways control was maintained. And the moment awareness enters the picture, the narcissist's carefully constructed strategy begins to fall apart. What once worked effortlessly for them suddenly stops working. This is the moment that shocks them. Not because they suddenly developed insight or accountability, but because the person they assumed would always be predictable has stepped outside the script. The emotional supply they relied on is no longer guaranteed. Their manipulations echo into silence. Their attempts to provoke reactions fall flat. And when every tactic they carefully plotted starts backfiring, the control they believed was permanent begins slipping through their fingers. There is a profound moment in life when the illusions of control that a narcissist has built around you begin to crumble. For months or even years, they may have carefully orchestrated scenarios, planting seeds of doubt, guilt, and confusion in your mind, believing that their strategy was infallible. They thrive on predictability, on the certainty that their manipulations will evoke the responses they expect. Every criticism, every subtle jab, every act of withholding was calculated to maintain their sense of power. They assume that your reactions will always feed their narrative and confirm their dominance. Yet as you grow in awareness and reclaim your inner strength, the dynamics begin to shift. The very tactics that once triggered fear, anxiety, or overexertion in you now encounter resistance. Silence replaces reactive defense. Clarity replaces confusion, and boundaries replace submission. Each time you refuse to fall into the traps they set, their carefully laid plans begin to unravel. The strategies they relied upon start failing in ways they never anticipated, leaving them bewildered and unprepared. They may escalate, attempt new angles, or become erratic, but their control is already weakening because it depended on your predictable engagement, and that engagement is no longer offered. In your life, this collapse becomes a revelation, both for you and for them. It shows the transformative power of self-awareness and steadfastness. The narcissist cannot manipulate what refuses to be manipulated, cannot control what refuses to bend. You witness the moment when their confidence in their schemes falters, when the elaborate web of influence they spun begins to disintegrate. What they thought was inevitable, their dominance, your compliance, the continuation of the emotional cycles they thrived on, is now undone. You begin to understand that their shock is a mirror of your own empowerment. The very person who once dictated your responses is now forced to confront the limits of their influence. The energy they once expended in plotting, in strategizing, in ensuring every detail favored them, is now met with indifference or boundaries that cannot be breached. They may appear calm, but inside, the realization hits. Their plan has failed. The collapse is silent, internal, but it is profound. You see it in subtle behaviors, in uncharacteristic frustration, in attempts to regain control that fall flat, because the control was never theirs to begin with. This moment of collapse is not just theirs, it is yours. It marks a turning point where your courage, your clarity, and your consistency rewrite the narrative. You step fully into your own power, recognizing that their manipulation only held sway as long as you allowed it to. Every failed tactic reinforces the truth that your autonomy cannot be dictated, your emotions cannot be hijacked, and your life cannot be scripted by someone else. This realization becomes a cornerstone of freedom, a validation of your resilience, and a quiet victory that no external recognition can ever diminish. There is a unique power in silence, a strength that is often underestimated, especially by those who thrive on chaos and control. In relationships with narcissistic personalities, silence is not weakness. It is a conscious choice, a protective shield, and a declaration of self-respect. For a long time, you may have felt compelled to respond, to explain, to justify, or to defend yourself against their criticisms and manipulations. Every word you offered, every emotion you expressed, was fuel for their game. They depended on your reactions, your need to be heard, and your desire for resolution to maintain their control. When you choose silence, everything changes. Your quiet becomes a mirror, reflecting their strategies back at them, exposing the futility of their efforts. Each attempt to provoke a reaction, to elicit guilt, or to manipulate outcomes meets with stillness instead of chaos. The scripts they meticulously prepared no longer hold power because they relied on your predictable engagement. Your calm refusal to play along disrupts the pattern they depend on, leaving them unsettled, confused, and ultimately shocked. In your life, this silence transforms ordinary interactions into acts of empowerment. It is not about avoidance. It is about presence without surrender, clarity without argument, and boundaries without aggression. You discover that your energy is no longer consumed by their schemes, and the space you create allows your own insight, growth, and peace to flourish. With each unprovoked response withheld, you reclaim authority over your emotional landscape and reinforce the reality that control is a privilege you grant no one without consent. Their confusion becomes a testament to your strength. They cannot understand why their manipulation fails, why the triggers they counted on are powerless, and why their usual tactics result only in emptiness. The shock they experience is a silent acknowledgement of the shift, an unconscious recognition that the person they expected to bend, to respond, or to chase has stepped into a new realm of autonomy. The games they plotted so carefully no longer serve them, and the frustration they feel is a reflection of the freedom you have embraced. As this unfolds, you witness a profound change not only in them but in yourself. Silence becomes an instrument of clarity, a signal that you are no longer accessible to their control. You learn that the absence of reaction does not signify passivity, but demonstrates mastery over your own emotions. It teaches patience, discernment, and the ability to withstand provocation without surrendering your peace. Ultimately, their shock is a byproduct of your resilience. The more they attempt to manipulate, the more powerless their efforts become. Your silence is a declaration that you will not be drawn into chaos, that your boundaries are inviolate, and that your inner calm cannot be purchased or coerced. In this quiet power, you find liberation and the realization that strength often manifests not in confrontation, but in the steady, unwavering refusal to surrender your dignity. There comes a moment in life when everything shifts, when the dynamics that once kept you entangled in someone else's control begin to dissolve. In the presence of a narcissist, it often feels as if the world is tilted in their favor, as if their plans, their manipulations, and their subtle forms of control are unstoppable. For a long time, you may have moved cautiously, navigating their moods, accommodating their expectations, and walking on eggshells to avoid conflict. Their strategies seemed flawless, designed to ensure that you remained reactive, dependent, and compliant. Yet, the turning point is not about defeating them in overt confrontation. It is about quietly, deliberately reclaiming your life. You begin to prioritize your growth, your clarity, and your emotional well-being. Every decision you make, every boundary you enforce, and every moment of self-reflection becomes a step away from their influence and toward your own empowerment. You no longer act to please or appease, but to honor yourself. You no longer respond impulsively to provocations. Instead, you move with intention and self-respect. As you rise, their carefully plotted schemes begin to unravel. The tacti, CSS, that once seemed infallible now falter because they relied on your compliance, your engagement, your predictability, your independence, your calm, and your unwavering focus on your own path. Expose the fragility of the control they once wielded. They may attempt to escalate, to provoke, or to regain influence. But every effort meets with resistance, with silence, or with boundaries that cannot be breached. The power they assumed was theirs by right is now revealed to be conditional, dependent entirely on your willingness to surrender it. In this turning point, you witness a profound shift, not just in them, but in yourself. You recognize the depth of your resilience, the clarity of your values, and the courage it takes to step fully into your own agency. Your confidence grows with each unshaken decision, each moment you refuse to be drawn back into old patterns, and each time you honor your needs over their expectations. The narcissist watches, often bewildered and frustrated, as the outcome they anticipated slips through their grasp. This rise is more than resistance. It is transformation. You begin to see life through a lens unclouded by manipulation, where your choices are guided by insight rather than fear, and where your peace is no longer negotiable. The experience teaches you that true empowerment comes not from defeating someone else, but from aligning with your own strength and integrity. It shows that when you step fully into yourself, the illusions of control held by others cannot stand. And in that moment, as they watch the schemes they plotted fall apart, you feel a quiet, undeniable victory. It is not a triumph of ego, but of awareness, courage, and freedom. The turning point is yours because it reflects the emergence of a self that cannot be controlled, manipulated, or diminished. It is a testament to the resilience of your spirit and the unshakable power of living in alignment with your own truth. The culmination of this journey is a quiet, yet profound liberation. You realize that the battles you once thought were about them were in truth about reclaiming yourself. Every manipulation that failed, every scheme that backfired, and every attempt to provoke you that fell flat became a confirmation of your own strength and clarity. The narcissist's shock is not your victory, but it is a reflection of the boundaries, awareness, and inner calm you have cultivated. You no longer measure your worth by their reactions or seek validation from someone incapable of genuine connection. In embracing your own autonomy, you step fully into a life guided by intention rather than fear. Your energy, once spent reacting to chaos, is now invested in growth, joy, and peace. You learn to trust your instincts, honor your emotions, and make choices aligned with your values. Each day, you are reminded that power lies not in controlling others, but in mastering yourself. The ultimate lesson is that freedom is not given, it is claimed. And when you claim it, the echoes of manipulation lose their hold, the webs of deceit unravel, and your spirit stands unshaken. You are no longer a participant in their game. You are the author of your own life. The clarity, dignity, and resilience you cultivate become a force far stronger than any control they once imagined.